Sarah Jensen's childhood was wrapped in the quiet predictability of her small Midwestern town. Rows of cornfields stretched endlessly under pale blue skies, and dusty roads wound between modest homes, local diners, and the occasional waving neighbor. Life here was simple, predictable, and safe, qualities that most of her classmates found comforting. But for Sarah, safety was never enough. She wanted more. From an early age, she was captivated by stories of courage and service. Her grandfather, a retired Navy officer, had a living room lined with medals, photographs, and mementos from a life of duty. Each evening he would sit with Sarah on his creaky recliner, recounting tales of far-off oceans, turbulent battles, and quiet moments of leadership that decided lives. Sarah listened with rapt attention, absorbing every detail. In her young mind, she saw herself in those stories not as a bystander, but as a participant. She dreamed of the uniform, the discipline, and the honor of serving her country. Her parents, while supportive, were cautious. Her father, a gentleman who ran the local hardware store, worried constantly about the dangers that lurked in the world beyond the cornfields. Her mother, a nurse with steady hands and a calm demeanor, understood ambition but feared the physical and emotional toll it would take. "It's not just about being strong, Sarah," her mother warned one evening, tucking her into bed. "It's about surviving when the world tests every part of you." But Sarah only smiled. Her mind was already set. She would enlist. School became her proving ground. She excelled in academics, particularly in history and leadership, while pushing herself to excel physically through cross-country, running, swimming, and martial arts. Sarah joined clubs that emphasized responsibility and teamwork, often stepping into leadership roles. Her peers admired her dedication, though some whispered about how intense she could be. Yet, for Sarah, the recognition was never the goal. The preparation was. The day she graduated, Sarah felt a mix of pride and anticipation. She had been accepted into the Navy, and the letter of enlistment in her hand seemed heavier than it should have been, burdened with the weight of the journey she was about to embark upon. At the ceremony, her grandfather clasped her hand tightly, his eyes glistening. "You have the heart, Sarah," he said quietly. "Now let the world test it." Her first days on base were a revelation. Gone were the familiar roads and quiet night. In their place stood immense ships with steel hulls that gleamed under the sun, drill instructors whose voices cut sharper than any blade, and routines so structured that any deviation felt like chaos. Sarah felt simultaneously overwhelmed and invigorated. Each morning began before dawn, with the whistle of reality cutting through the dawn mist. Every task demanded perfection. Every mistake drew scrutiny. Physical pain quickly became part of daily life. Her muscles burned from relentless push-ups, runs, and obstacle courses. Sleep was scarce, and her body often ached in ways she had never known possible. Yet she found a rhythm, a strange sense of purpose in the exhaustion. With each passing day, Sarah noticed a quiet change in herself. Where once there had been doubt, now there was determination. Where there had been fear, there was focus. Instructors took notice. One senior officer remarked during inspection, "She's tough. She's relentless. But I wonder if she has the endurance for what comes next." Sarah heard the words but felt no fear. She had already decided that she would not quit, that whatever lay ahead, physical, emotional, or moral, she would endure. As night fell over the base, Sarah often stood at the edge of the dock, gazing at the dark waters stretching toward the horizon. She imagined herself navigating those oceans, facing storms and challenges, and proving her worth not just to her superiors, but to herself. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that her life was no longer about the quiet town, the predictable days, or even her own comfort. It was about courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of a dream that would define her entire being. Little did Sarah know, the path she had chosen would test her far beyond physical endurance. It would challenge her identity, her resilience, and ultimately reveal a strength she had not yet discovered her. Strength that would earn respect in ways she could never anticipate. Even from the highest ranks of her country's military, boot camp was nothing like Sarah had imagined. The excitement she felt when she first stepped onto the base quickly gave way to a relentless, almost punishing rhythm. Mornings began before dawn, with the cold slap of reality as instructors barked commands that left no room for hesitation. The air was thick with tension and the smell of sweat, fear, and determination. Every moment was scrutinized, every misstep magnified. Sarah quickly realized that in this world, failure wasn't just personal, it could endanger everyone around her. The physical challenges were brutal. Long runs across uneven terrain left her legs trembling and her lungs burning. Push-ups and sit-ups were endless, repeated until muscles screamed and vision blurred. Obstacle courses loomed like mountains, walls to scale, ropes to climb, and mud pits that sapped her energy before she even reached the halfway point. On one particularly grueling day, she stumbled during a rope climb, her side twisting painfully. A sharp pang ran along her ribs, fleeting but alarming. She shook it off, determined not to show weakness. In this place, weakness was visible and visibility could cost respect, or worse. Despite the physical torment, Sarah found unexpected solace in the rhythm of training. Each drill, each obstacle, each test was an opportunity to prove herself not just to the instructors or her peers, but to the person she was becoming. She developed a reputation among her fellow recruits for resilience and composure under pressure. Marcus, her closest friend and ally in boot camp, often joked, "You're going to break them all before they break you." She laughed, but inside she knew that survival in boot camp wasn't about breaking others, it was about mastering herself. The mental challenges were as punishing as the physical ones. Sleep was scarce, schedules merciless, and every detail mattered. Recruits were expected to memorize procedures, respond instantly to commands, and operate with precision even under the stress of simulated emergencies. Sarah discovered that fear could be a tool, not just a threat. Learning to control it, to harness it, became as important as her push-ups or obstacle runs. She became alert to subtleties in her environment, a flicker of movement in a drill, a shadow in the barracks, a shift in the instructor's tone. These skills, she realized, were preparing her for something far beyond training grounds. Camaraderie grew in the most unlikely places. Sarah and her small circle of friends, bonded by exhaustion and shared struggle, became each other's lifeline. In the quiet moments before lights out, huddled under thin blankets, they shared stories of home, fears, and dreams. Marcus often leaned in, whispering, "You don't have to hide everything, you know. But I get it, you're made of steel." Sarah would smile, appreciating the sentiment, yet keeping the deeper aches and worries to herself. The final weeks of boot camp brought tests designed to push recruits to the breaking point. In a simulated combat scenario, recruits faced sudden ambushes, physical obstacles, and split-second decision-making challenges. It was here that Sarah's leadership shone. Despite the growing pain in her side, she instinctively took charge of her team, giving commands with calm authority. Each move was deliberate, calculated, and effective. The instructors watched closely, noting her precision, her courage, and the quiet fire in her eyes. When the exercise ended, sweat-soaked and exhausted, Sarah felt an unfamiliar pride. She had not just survived, she had thrived under extreme conditions. Her body ached, her ribs throbbed, but she had proven something to herself that no test score could ever show. She could endure, adapt, and lead even when everything around her demanded surrender. Yet, beneath her pride, a quiet unease lingered. The sharp pang in her ribs was no longer occasionally, it was a constant reminder that even the strongest armor couldn't shield her from vulnerability. She vowed silently that she would push through, hiding the pain, because strength wasn't just about muscles or courage. It was about perseverance when no one else could see the battle you were fighting. Boot camp had stripped her down, tested her limits, and rebuilt her in the image of a soldier. By the time graduation day arrived, Sarah stood taller, her uniform crisp, her gaze steady, her scars invisible but present a silent testament to the cost of ambition, courage, and unyielding determination. She was ready for the world beyond the base, where the true test of her strength awaited. Far from drills and simulations, in the chaos of real deployment. Sarah Jensen had imagined deployments countless times, but reality was unlike anything she had prepared for. The day she stepped off the transport plane in the foreign country, a heat unlike anything back home enveloped her. Dust swirled in the air, and the sun beat down relentlessly, glaring off cracked buildings and dry, barren soil. The streets were quiet yet tense, each corner potentially hiding danger. The smell of diesel, sweat, and dust filled her senses, reminding her that she was no longer in the orderly confines of boot camp. Her unit's mission was clear: provide security and support in a region of ongoing conflict, where every decision could mean life or death. Sarah adjusted quickly, absorbing the environment while observing her surroundings with the alert eyes of a seasoned soldier. Despite the novelty and chaos, she felt a strange sense of purpose. This was why she had endured grueling months of training. This was where she could prove herself, not just to her superiors, but to herself. It was during a routine patrol that everything changed. The convoy moved cautiously along a narrow road, flanked by crumbling walls and scattered debris. Sarah walked near the rear, scanning every shadow, listening to the quiet tension that hung over the team. Then, in an instant, the world erupted. An explosion shattered the air, sending dust, rocks, and shrapnel in every direction. The force threw her to the ground, knocking the breath from her lungs. A sharp, searing pain ran along her side, and she immediately knew that her ribs were badly injured. But there was no time to dwell on pain. Training kicked in instinctively. Sarah rolled over, shielding a comrade from debris and chaos. She assessed the situation with a calm precision that belied the fear curling in her stomach. Around her, soldiers scrambled, some injured, some disoriented. Sarah barked orders, pulled the wounded to cover, and coordinated a defensive perimeter, all while her own side burned with agony. Medics arrived, but she refused immediate evacuation. The mission, her comrades, and the lives depending on their actions came first. Every movement was agony, each breath a reminder that she had been wounded. Yet, she persisted, relying on sheer willpower and mental discipline honed during months of boot camp. She focused on the task at hand, refusing to let pain dictate her actions. When the smoke cleared and the convoy was secured, she finally allowed herself to be examined. The medics worked quickly, stabilizing her injuries. She had multiple rib fractures, and the potential for internal damage was significant. As they wrapped her and prepared her for transport, Sarah's mind was not on the pain or fear, it was on her unit. Everyone had survived, and the mission, though interrupted, had been accomplished. Back at base, Sarah faced another battle, recovery. The physical pain was relentless, and nights were long and sleepless. Yet, even as she rested, her mind replayed every moment of the ambush, the dust, the chaos, the cries of fear, the surge of adrenaline, and the instinctive clarity that had guided her actions. She realized that her strength wasn't just physical, it was a combination of discipline, courage, and mental resilience that allowed her to act decisively in life-or-death situations. Her injuries left visible marks on her body, subtle but permanent. They would later become the scars along her ribs, hidden beneath uniforms, but etched into her identity. More importantly, the experience left an indelible mark on her psyche. She understood now the cost of service, not just the danger faced in the moment, but the emotional weight carried long after the battle was over. Despite the recovery period, Sarah refused to step back from her responsibilities. She participated in missions again as soon as her medical team allowed, determined to prove that she could endure, persevere, and lead despite her injuries. Her resilience earned quiet admiration from her peers, though she remained modest, never boasting about the pain she had endured or the choices she had made. By the end of her first deployment, Sarah had transformed from a determined recruit into a battle-tested soldier. She carried herself differently, tighter posture, sharper focus, a new awareness of the fragility of life. The experience had revealed a strength she had only begun to understand, laying the foundation for the heroism that would eventually earn the respect of the highest-ranking officers, including the Admiral who would one day witness the scars she bore. Sarah Jensen returned from her first deployment physically stronger but emotionally transformed. Her injuries along her ribs had healed, though not perfectly. The jagged scars that ran under her uniform were invisible to the world, but they were a permanent reminder of the day she had faced death and survived. While the medics had stitched and bandaged her wounds, nothing could erase the mental imprint of that ambush to dust, the shouts, the explosive force that had thrown her life into chaos. Back on base, the day-to-day life of service continued, seemingly routine compared to the chaos she had survived. Sarah immersed herself in her duties with meticulous focus. She was now more observant, more deliberate in every action, and her peers quickly noticed the quiet intensity she carried. Where once she had been a determined recruit learning to survive, she had become a soldier who carried the weight of experience and trauma with grace. Her scars, hidden beneath her uniform, became symbols of the silent battles she fought every day. When she carried heavy equipment, ran drills, or led missions, she was constantly aware of the physical limitations imposed by her injury. Every movement reminded her of the pain she had endured, yet she refused to show weakness. To Sarah, strength was not only surviving the moment, it was enduring when no one else could see the fight within her. Among her colleagues, Sarah's reputation grew. She was recognized for her skill in tactical operations and her unwavering calm under pressure. Her unit respected her instinctive leadership. She had a knack for reading situations before they escalated, anticipating danger and making decisions that saved lives. Yet, despite the outward appearance of control, Sarah wrestled with private struggles. Nights were hardest, when sleep was interrupted by sharp twinges of pain or memories of the ambush. Alone in her quarters, she would often trace the faint lines beneath her uniform, remembering the chaos and feeling a quiet mix of pride and sorrow. Sarah's determination to excel without complaint sometimes created distance between her and her peers. While others shared stories of hardship and fear, she remained tight-lipped, offering guidance and reassurance but never revealing the full extent of her sacrifice. Marcus, her closest friend, noticed the quiet weight she carried and often urged her to speak up. "You don't have to do this alone, Sarah," he said one night, after a long training session. "What you've been through, it's okay to let people see it." She smiled faintly, appreciating his concern, but replied, "Some things can't be seen, Marcus, but they can still guide how I act." Her leadership extended beyond physical tasks. Sarah became a mentor to newer recruits, quietly teaching them the value of resilience, discipline, and mental toughness. She encouraged them to push past fatigue, to trust their instincts, and to rely on their team. Through these lessons, she found a sense of purpose beyond her own recovery, a way to transform the pain she carried into guidance for others. Despite her dedication, Sarah sometimes felt invisible in the eyes of higher command. Achievements and medals recognized obvious acts of bravery, but the quiet perseverance she demonstrated, the decisions made under duress, the pain endured in silence went largely unnoticed. This frustration lingered, but it also fueled her resolve. She learned to take pride in actions that were not applauded publicly, understanding that heroism often existed in unseen places. As time passed, Sarah adapted to life with her hidden scars. She developed routines to manage the lingering pain and built mental strategies to confront trauma without letting it consume her. In her heart, she knew that these scars, both visible and invisible, were part of her identity, a testament to courage, endurance, and the personal cost of service. Yet, even as she excelled and inspired those around her, a part of her longed for recognition, not for vanity, but for acknowledgement of the sacrifices made. Little did Sarah know that the moment of recognition was approaching in a way she could never anticipate, and it would come from the most unexpected and powerful source, an admiral, who would see her scars and understand the true measure of her courage. The morning sun rose over the base, casting long shadows across the asphalt and illuminating the disciplined rows of soldiers preparing for inspection. Sarah Jensen stood among her unit, her uniform crisp, hair perfectly tied, and boots polished to a reflective shine. Today was no ordinary day. A high-ranking official, the Admiral, known for his discerning eye and exacting standards, was scheduled to inspect the base. The news had rippled through the ranks, heightening nerves and whispers alike. Sarah had faced countless drills, deployments, and crises, but this visit carried a different kind of weight. It wasn't a matter of survival or strategy. It was a test of presence, composure, and perception. Her hidden scars, the physical reminders of a near-fatal ambush months earlier, burned slightly beneath her uniform. She had worn them silently ever since, letting her actions speak louder than her injuries. But now, she wondered, would her courage ever be fully understood without showing what she had endured? Her peers moved with mechanical precision, each trying to anticipate the Admiral's gaze and earn approval. Sarah, however, felt a quiet focus settle over her. She had trained for emergencies, for chaos, for moments when instinct and discipline had to override fear. This was different. It was a moment that demanded both courage and vulnerability. The Admiral arrived with a measured presence, his uniform immaculate, eyes sharp and penetrating. Conversations hushed, and the air seemed to thicken with tension. Soldiers stood at attention, rifles held, posture perfect. As he walked past, evaluating each unit, Sarah could feel the weight of scrutiny in his gaze. She kept her focus steady, controlling her breathing, and preparing herself for whatever was expected. Her unit was summoned to demonstrate a tactical briefing, a simulation that highlighted strategy, coordination, and critical thinking under pressure. Sarah was called forward to present. Heart steady, voice firm, she outlined the operation with clarity, detailing objectives, contingencies, and observations from her deployments. Every word was deliberate, every gesture calculated. She projected confidence, hiding the subtle discomfort from her rib injury beneath years of training. The Admiral observed silently, his face unreadable. Every command, every nuance of the briefing, was noted. Sarah's peers whispered under their breath about her composure, admiring the calm precision with which she handled the pressure. Yet, Sarah's thoughts lingered on a different question. Would he ever see the full story of the sacrifice she had silently carried? As the briefing concluded, the Admiral stepped closer, eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing more than just the facts presented. Sarah felt a tense silence settle over the room, a quiet pause that seemed to stretch endlessly. The moment had arrived. A decision loomed. She could continue hiding her scars, letting her performance alone define her worth, or she could reveal them, showing not only the visible reminders of her trauma but the invisible strength that had carried her through the darkest moments of deployment. Taking a deep breath, Sarah made her choice. With deliberate calm, she discreetly lifted the edge of her shirt just enough to reveal the jagged scars along her ribs. The room seemed to hold its breath. Every eye turned, but none more importantly than the Admiral's. His gaze shifted from analytical to something deeper, a mix of disbelief, respect, and quiet awe. For a moment there was complete silence, the kind of silence that conveys recognition without words. Sarah felt her heartbeat echoing in her chest, a mix of relief, pride, and nervous anticipation. She had exposed not just the physical evidence of her sacrifice, but the emotional truth of her journey. The vulnerability she had carried alone was now acknowledged. Silently but powerfully, by the highest-ranking officer in the room. Her peers watched in astonishment. Some had known of her injuries, but none had realized the extent of what she had endured. Others had only seen the results of her discipline and leadership, unaware of the physical and emotional toll it had exacted. This single gesture transformed perceptions. It revealed the depth of her courage, the quiet heroism that had been hidden beneath the uniform. The Admiral finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Your service, your sacrifice, it goes beyond commendation. It is the embodiment of courage." No applause was needed. The respect in his eyes said more than words ever could. Sarah lowered her shirt, letting the scars remain visible only to those who had earned the honor of seeing them. In that moment, Sarah understood something profound. Recognition wasn't just about medals or words. It was about being truly seen for the battles fought in silence, the pain endured privately, and the strength shown when no one was watching. The room seemed to freeze as Sarah Jensen lifted the edge of her uniform and revealed the jagged scars along her ribs. The abruptness of the gesture, coupled with the stark reality of her injuries, commanded attention. Every pair of eyes turned to her, but the most significant gaze was the Admiral's. His stern, analytical eyes widened as they traced the thin, uneven lines that told a story of survival, sacrifice, and unyielding courage. For a moment, the world seemed to fall silent. There were no murmurs, no shuffling of feet, only the palpable weight of recognition. Sarah's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the culmination of years of endurance finally meeting acknowledgement. Every ache she had hidden, every sleepless night haunted by pain, every operation she had executed while silently suffering, now stood exposed not as weakness, but as undeniable strength. The Admiral took a slow, deliberate step forward. His face was composed, but the subtle shift in his posture betrayed the depth of his respect. He studied the scars as though reading a history etched into her very being. These were not marks of defeat, they were evidence of resilience under fire, of choices made in the face of danger, of courage that had saved lives without the need for acclaim. Sarah's colleagues looked on in awe. Some were moved, their admiration deepening as they finally understood the personal cost behind the soldier they had always respected. Others were quiet, absorbing the profound gravity of what they were witnessing. In one silent act, she had transformed not only her own narrative but the perception of everyone in the room. Her scars were more than physical, they were symbolic of the invisible battles every soldier might face. The Admiral finally spoke, his voice measured and low, carrying authority tempered with reverence. "Your sacrifice, your courage, it is beyond commendable," he said. His words, though brief, carried the weight of decades of experience in recognizing true heroism. There was no need for ceremony, no need for applause. The acknowledgement in his eyes, the silent respect, said more than any medal or speech ever could. Sarah lowered her shirt slowly, feeling a wave of relief and validation wash over her. She had carried these scars in secrecy for months, hiding not just the physical evidence but the emotional burden that accompanied them. For the first time, the weight she bore alone felt shared, recognized, and honored. The silence that followed was not awkward, it was reverent. A space where courage was understood without embellishment, where endurance was witnessed without spectacle. Her mind flashed back to the first moment of injury, the ambush, the pain, the fear, and the decision to protect her unit above herself. Each memory surged with renewed clarity, now framed not by trauma, but by triumph. She realized that her heroism had never depended on recognition. It had depended on action, on resilience, and on choosing to act when it mattered most. But to be seen, truly seen, by someone of the Admiral's rank was transformative. Around her, her peers' reactions were equally powerful. Marcus, standing nearby, felt a swell of pride. "She's incredible," he whispered, almost to himself. Others nodded quietly. Their understanding of her courage deepened. The admiration in the room was not performative, it was earned, visceral, and lasting. Sarah had become a living testament to bravery under pressure, a model of endurance for every soldier who would come after her. In that charged silence, Sarah also recognized something personal. Strength was not about hiding pain or enduring in isolation. True strength could coexist with vulnerability, and acknowledgement did not diminish resilience, it validated it. She had shown her scars, yes, but she had also shown the quiet determination, the emotional fortitude, and the unwavering courage that had defined her service. The moment lingered, suspended in time. It was more than recognition. It was a passing of understanding between one soldier and the world she had chosen to protect. Sarah Jensen, once a determined recruit from a small Midwestern town, had become something far greater, a symbol of perseverance, courage, and silent heroism. And in that moment, as the Admiral's gaze met hers, she knew that her journey, her sacrifices, and her scars would never be invisible again. After the Admiral's visit, the atmosphere on the base shifted subtly but profoundly. Sarah Jensen walked through the familiar corridors with a new awareness not just of herself, but of the impact her actions and courage had on those around her. Recognition, when it finally came, was more than ceremonial. It was deeply personal. She received formal commendations, medals, and words of praise, but what resonated most was the understanding in her peers' eyes. For months, she had quietly endured, performed, and led without expectation of acknowledgement. Now, her sacrifices were visible, and the weight she had carried alone felt lighter. The ceremony itself was understated but meaningful. The Admiral standing before her presented a commendation for exceptional bravery and leadership under fire. He spoke not just of her performance, but of the courage displayed in the face of personal injury, and the resilience that had allowed her to protect and guide her unit. Sarah accepted the medal, her hands steady, though her mind replayed every moment of the journey that had led her here, the ambush, the sleepless nights, the hidden scars, and the quiet determination to persevere. Beyond the ceremony, Sarah began to reflect more deeply on what her service truly meant. She realized that heroism wasn't always loud, and recognition wasn't always immediate. Some of the most impactful actions, the ones that changed lives, were carried out in silence. For months she had hidden her pain, yet she had continued to act decisively, with empathy and courage. Her scars were not merely physical, they were a roadmap of endurance, a testament to the cost of protecting others, and a silent narrative of triumph over adversity. That it was this realization that spurred Sarah to begin mentoring younger recruits. She wanted to teach more than strategy and tactics. She wanted to impart lessons in resilience, emotional intelligence, and perseverance. In quiet sessions after drills, she shared insights on how to navigate fear, manage pain, and make decisions when lives were at stake. Without revealing all of her own experiences, she guided them in ways that transformed hesitation into confidence. Her mentorship became highly respected, and recruits began looking to her not only for guidance, but as a model of how strength and vulnerability could coexist. Sarah also became an advocate for injured service members, those who carried unseen scars like hers. She spoke about the importance of acknowledging not just physical wounds but emotional trauma. Her story inspired changes in how the base approached medical support, counseling, and morale programs, emphasizing that true resilience included both recovery and recognition. Slowly, a culture of understanding began to take root, one where hidden struggles were honored alongside visible achievements. Yet, amid recognition and advocacy, Sarah remained humble. She did not seek fame or public attention. Her motivation was rooted in purpose. The medals she had earned were symbols, but they were not the essence of her journey. What mattered most was the transformation she had undergone from a determined recruit driven by ambition to a seasoned soldier who understood the value of endurance, empathy, and quiet heroism. In moments of solitude, she still touched the faint scars along her ribs, reflecting on the ambush and the journey since what had once been a source of pain had become a symbol of strength, a reminder that survival was not merely about physical resilience but about courage in the face of overwhelming adversity. She felt gratitude for the comrades who had relied on her, for the mentors who had guided her, and for the experiences that had revealed the depth of her character. Sarah's influence began to extend beyond the base. Stories of her bravery circulated quietly through the military community, inspiring others who had endured injury, loss, or hidden hardship. She became a voice for those who could not speak openly, a living example that courage was not always visible, and that true strength could be both silent and profound. Through mentoring, advocacy, and personal reflection, Sarah had transformed her trials into a legacy. Her journey demonstrated that courage was more than action, it was endurance, integrity, and the willingness to carry invisible burdens with dignity. She understood now that her scars, once hidden and personal, had become a bridge to help others face their own challenges, reminding everyone that heroism often lay not in recognition, but in the quiet, steadfast courage of those who persevered when no one was watching. Years had passed since the day Sarah Jensen revealed the scars along her ribs to the Admiral. The young recruit from a small Midwestern town had grown into a seasoned veteran, her experiences having shaped her into more than a soldier. They had shaped her into a symbol of resilience and courage. Her story, once hidden beneath a uniform and unspoken words, now echoed across bases, inspiring those who faced challenges, both visible and invisible. Sarah often found herself returning to quiet moments of reflection. Walking past the training fields, she watched new recruits push through drills, their faces taut with determination and fear. She remembered herself in their place, uncertain, eager, and carrying a dream that felt larger than life. She understood now that courage was not only demonstrated in moments of crisis, but in the quiet commitment to continue despite the unknown, the pain, and the risk. Her mentorship had become legendary on the base. Sarah guided young soldiers through the rigors of military life, teaching them not just the techniques of their trade, but the lessons of endurance, resilience, and emotional fortitude. She encouraged them to honor their limits while striving to surpass them, to acknowledge vulnerability without surrendering to it, and to lead with both strength and empathy. Her story, once a secret, became a beacon. Soldiers who carried hidden scars, whether physical or emotional, saw in her an example that they, too, could survive, persevere, and thrive. Recognition continued to arrive, not as spectacle, but as affirmation of the depth of her service. Former superiors, peers, and even the Admiral, who had once stood silent before her scars, sought her counsel and visited to express respect. Her medals and commendations, while numerous, mattered less than the quiet understanding she inspired. For Sarah, the true reward was the knowledge that her actions and endurance had created ripples far beyond herself, touching the lives of those who would one day face trials she had once endured. One afternoon, years later, she stood at a military memorial, surrounded by soldiers and veterans alike. The Admiral, now retired, approached, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Your courage has shaped more lives than you will ever know," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of decades of service. Sarah looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude, not for the praise, but for the recognition that her story, the pain endured, the sacrifices made, was truly understood. As she surveyed the memorial, Sarah thought about the countless individuals who had come before and after her, soldiers who fought bravely, often unseen, and whose endurance shaped history in ways few recognized. She realized that heroism was not defined solely by medals or public acknowledgement, but by the integrity, strength, and resilience shown when no one was watching. Her scars, once hidden and private, had become a symbol of that enduring courage. Sarah also devoted herself to broader advocacy, speaking at military conferences, supporting veterans programs, and mentoring soldiers transitioning back to civilian life. She shared her experiences to highlight the importance of mental health, the reality of hidden injuries, and the power of resilience. Her story became a source of hope for those grappling with invisible wounds, reminding them that survival and strength were not measured by visibility, but by the courage to continue despite adversity. In her quiet moments, Sarah would touch the scars along her ribs, feeling the faint ridges beneath her fingers. They were no longer a mark of pain, but a reminder of everything she had endured, the lives she had protected, and the legacy she had built. Every ache she had hidden, every challenge she had faced alone, had contributed to a story larger than herself, a story that inspired others to find courage within their own struggles. Sarah Jensen had begun as a determined young woman from a small town, full of dreams and ambition. She had faced injury, chaos, and doubt, yet emerged stronger, more compassionate, and more impactful than she could have imagined. Her journey had become a testament to the enduring human spirit, proving that true courage is not only measured in extraordinary deeds, but in the quiet perseverance, integrity, and unwavering dedication to others that leave a lasting legacy. As the sun set over the training grounds and the memorial, Sarah stood tall, knowing that her story, etched in scars, actions, and mentorship, would endure. She had transformed suffering into strength, solitude into leadership, and hidden battles into inspiration for generations yet to come. And in that legacy she had found the ultimate recognition, the knowledge that courage, when lived fully and silently, never goes unseen.